All right. Actually, this is quite beautiful. Hey you guys, my name is Sean. I'm a houseplant enthusiast from Jakarta, Indonesia. In this episode, I'm going to be propagating this Anthurium dorayaki cross with veitchi. This was actually gifted by Mr. Eddy Pranoto, who is a breeder of Anthurium. He's quite the master because this is actually two different sections of Anthurium. So it's not easy to kind of get these two breeds going on, but here is an example of his work. Feel free to check out his Instagram for more work like this. Now, with most of my rescue care propagation videos, this plant has seen better days. It used to have much larger leaves and it does look a little bit like a horseshoe crab, and I really love that look. And the reason why it's giving me smaller and smaller leaves is one, it's matured enough where it's like put out tons of flowers. I kept cutting the top of the flowers off. So this is very old plants. When you kind of ignore your plant, they get large and then they sometimes get small, if you know what I mean. So with all plants that we own in our collection, it is always a good idea to propagate them at some point. This is so I cracked the perlite here. So it's a good idea to set back their age, turn them into younger selves of themselves, but also have multiples. And actually as a hybrid, this one has exhibited hybrid vigor. And I actually got this plant around 2 to 3 years ago when there was an Equagenera event here. Mr. Eddy actually met me and put this plant in my hand, and I was so overjoyed. So thank you again, Eddy. Very easy to care for. Bright indirect light. With your velvets, you do want to give them medium light, but this one can take a bit more light. In fact, this one here was grown in almost full sun, although it's been cloudy, it's rainy seasons, but my gardener accidentally placed it outside in the front yard, and it's just, I think, maybe even rotten. I took off a stem here and it felt mushy. It rained on us incessantly for days on end these days, but I also see some bleaching on the leaves. So back to the light, you do want to give them bright but indirect light. Medium light is also okay for it. It does grow in a rosette pattern, so if you have top light, it will be better, but if you put it on a shelf, all the leaves are invariably going to face towards the front of the shelf, towards the light. And with all my Anthuriums, I tend to overwater them. Although I have to put a disclaimer here, for a lot of you guys living in lower humidity, your Anthuriums can take a bit more water than in my case. Don't forget, I live in the tropics and it is also very hot outside. So the Anthuriums, they really need to be backed away with watering. They have really thick roots, which we will see soon enough. So these roots, stem and leaves can actually store quite a lot of water. So the number one way for me to kill most of my Anthuriums is by overwatering. So I always try to back off with watering whenever I can. I give them clear pots so I can see if there's any water that's pooling inside. So this tip may apply to some of you, but again, if you live in a low humidity, low light environment, indoors with low airflow, you might want to adjust the water accordingly. I give this my aeroid potting mix, although I'm starting to change that with my Anthuriums because they have such robust root system. Their root to leaf ratio is insane. So we need to give them a lot of room for the roots. So I might give them, you know, a bit of a mix, still the aeroid, but I want to put in a lot of the finer sediments there and back off with watering. And then fertilize the same way with other houseplants, diluted but regularly. I do try to give plants with all green forms like this more nitrogen so that they can promote bigger leaves, and not particularly pest prone. Most Anthuriums here in my climate, they're pretty okay. I know that some of you complain about spider mites and things like that, and I do get spider mites on my alocasias and calatheas, but I've never really had them on my Anthuriums. And then as an Anthurium, a lot of them do get fungal and bacterial spots, although this one, again, this is a wonderful hybrid. It's very strong. I really have no issues with this, but if you see a lot of your Anthuriums, they might have some fungal spots or whatever. You do want to treat them with neem oil or with fungicide and things like that. So without further ado, I'm gonna go straight to my favorite part, which is cutting this plant up. And if you stick around to the very end of the video, we will be seeing some updates. Sorry, I'm like staring over there a lot because there's a beautiful King of Spades that's like unfurling with a new leaf. And it's just so beautiful. All right, here goes nothing. Yeah. All right. Actually, this is quite beautiful. I don't see any signs of root rot, but some of the stem here looked a little bit mushy. And as I mentioned earlier, this is an old plant, so there's a main stem here, and I believe the main stem probably goes, you know, pretty much all the way down when the leaves were very small. This is what happens with plants. They grow vertically upwards, and then you have a lot of nodes in between that will give you a chance to sprout baby plants. Now this is gonna be a little bit tricky for me. When you plant an Anthurium or alocasias and things like that, or aglaonemas, it's a good idea to plant them deep, because I noticed that all these below here, these are all like just roots. So I believe the main stem is just within here. It's a good idea to plant them deep and then let them grow upwards, and as they grow up, you just keep adding media to it. I don't know why I did this before. Can't remember the reasons why, but there's this like empty space in here. And we want to try to salvage as much roots as possible. So I'm going to be untangling this. Yeah, when you're alone doing these things, it's nice to put on some good music and just go to town. It's my favorite thing to do, although admittedly, I haven't been able to get into my plant care and repotting and propagation as much as I would like to. There's been so many travel opportunities. Thank you so much. All these wonderful events that has been flying me all over the world to film about plants, things that I love, to tell stories about gardeners, about growers, breeders. Check out those episodes. Those are actually important. I know what I do here is very entertaining for some of you guys. There's a lot of you guys who come to my channel because in the earlier days I do these kinds of videos. So you guys are here for my propagation videos, but I urge you, if you're a plant lover, all my traveling videos are interesting too. Almost there. This is actually looking extremely beautiful. So beautiful. I love watching this. I love working with plants like this. Although the media is indeed very wet. I didn't water it today. It rained last night, but it's still pretty moist in my hands. I brought my pruning shears here, but it does look like the stem is thicker than I have imagined. So I might have to get to it with a knife. Now, unlike monsteras and philodendrons, the Anthurium internodes are super tight. So in this case, I will not be studying for the growing eye and everything to figure out where I cut, but I'm just going to use sort of my instinct. I'm going to try to find an opening here where I can get a decent amount of roots for the top cutting, and I'm just going to make a cut. Okay, I think this is a reasonable amount. Yeah, I can see the stem in the middle is thicker, and then it became smaller as it put out these smaller leaves. It's just turning into a juvenile form because it's not getting the right pot size and everything. It's just too root bound. So I don't know how much I cut, but I see a sizable chunk of stem. The top cut is always the most precious, the most viable, the fastest to produce larger leaves. So this is a lot of roots for this cutting. I'm very confident about this one. So let me show you the cutting up close. Look at all these roots, and that's where I made the cut. I'm gonna be applying some activated charcoal over here. Got my activated charcoal powder. A lot of you guys always ask me what it is. It's just food grade charcoal for baking and such. And this will sterilize the wound, the cut. So I'm gonna move this back into its original pot. Remember I said earlier, try to pot them deep if possible, and then add media to it as it grows a bit taller. And these days for my aroid potting mix, I have charcoal and pine bark here. Charcoal's for orchids and the pine bark's for reptiles. So it's pretty much sterile. Because I do water down my plants every day, so. And earlier I mentioned that I do want to add a bit more of the finer particles. And so here in my hand, this is rice hull, burnt rice hull, and perlite. So this will retain a little bit of water. And just give it a shake. And I think I am all set. Just want to make sure that all the roots are well buried under here. Now you can skip watering for the first day I do water it lightly just because I wanted to have that sealed in humidity in the media for the roots not to dry out too fast. So I just put a bit of water on the top. And this is my pesticide. I use, what do you call it? Carbofuran, which is banned in some countries. Feel free to use anything you want, or if you're not too pest prone or you have a smaller collection, you don't really need it. But I have a lot of plants in my collection and I will not get to this plant for the next 3 to 6 months. So I put it, and this is a slow release fertilizer. Because it's already got roots, I'm gonna start adding the slow release. All right, that's all set. Okay, now for the base here, I don't know if you can see here, this is the main stem running down. And of course, it gets smaller and smaller as you go down. So it will put out more juvenile leaves because the original leaf came from around this node. There are a few different options. How conservative I want to be. I think I'm gonna be a little bit greedy with this one, since we're gonna make a video out of this. Okay. Very, very small cut, but I know there's at least 2 to 3 nodes in there. Now I'm gonna rub this top and bottom. This is a lot of roots, so this might take off very fast. Or it might also be a downfall. It might actually rot the plant sometimes if it's got too much roots. There. So I don't know if there are any growing, there's probably some growing eye, sorry. So there's probably some growing eye. I see one over here, it's growing eye there. So, and then I don't know if there are some over at the other side. I haven't actually looked. This is actually a pretty narrow cut. I think there's one here, if you look at it. There's a growing eye over there in the middle. So there's 2 potential vines, maybe even 3, that can come out of this. I'm gonna make more cuts before I pot them up. Another one. This one I took a longer chunk because that one was a little bit too small. I'm gonna rub it with activated charcoal. And by the way, the results for this, I don't know what I'm gonna do with it for the propagation, because this was gifted by Eddy. It's an original hybrid, and it would not be ethical to sell it. So I don't know, I might put it around the house. I might offer to give it back to him. For the last one, I might just break it into 2. I see here, that's a easy peasy, super easy. Do it with your plants because eventually they're gonna just keep getting longer and longer, and then at some point they're gonna, get old, they might die, nothing lives forever. When you do this, you really set back their age. You get many more plants, they become your insurance, because I really do not want to lose this plant. There's so many hybrids now for Anthuriums, it's insane. Quite a lot, and I've done a few episodes visiting some of these growers. Anthuriums are starting to grow on me. I used to struggle with them, again, because mostly of overwatering. But once I've learned to back away with watering, and I also started growing some of them indoors. They love it indoors here more than outdoors, especially in air-conditioned room where it's cooler. So humidity is not my #1 problem here. I think the #1 problem here is the overwatering and the heat. That really kills them really fast. This one, I really need to leave special instructions for my gardener to never overwater, because these cuttings right here, they really don't need a ton of water. Yeah, I was too optimistic. That would not fit in there. So for me here, it really is about communication with the gardener, because I'm away so much of the time and there's a million things for him to do. So sometimes I feel bad with all these projects that he needs to keep an eye out for, and if it didn't work out, if they don't make it, that's okay. I'm not gonna put any hard blame on him. So I'm just gonna leave it like this in here, and then with this one, I'm just gonna start giving it my regular media here. I have a red ribbon that I put for plants that don't need a ton of water. So I might do that. So I'm gonna just leave the top of the cutting to expose with the air. Another way to do this would be to tent it. If I just put something over it, like a inverted jar, just spray a bit of humidity and let the humidity take care of the moisture of the humidity, because humidity does encourage root growth. And because there's some roots, I'm gonna add a bit of slow release. Just a little bit, but no pesticide yet for this. I don't think it needs it yet. It's sterile media. All right, so here are 4 pots of bare nodes and 1 top cutting here. I will see you guys in a few months. And this is how I would water it. Just very gently on the top, not like soak it, so that there's just some trapped humidity in there in the pot. So it does need some air circulation, it does need some oxygen in the roots. Don't drown your plants. If you do this lightly every day, you should be fine. I use my feelings. I don't go to town with the watering. Yeah. And I usually have success rate growing these in just ambient room humidity and temperature. All of these babies have sprouted. Now, I haven't watched the previous clip to see how many of these pots we have before, but from what I can see, all of them should be present here. Now, the mother plant here has shown really promising growth. I believe this is its newest leaf. It's beautiful and glossy. And then if you look down inside, there's all these wonderful aerial roots that's starting to form, which means that it's growing out new roots really quickly. I guess one of the ways that I can help this grow along even more, as you can see, it's a little bit root bound, is to add just a tiny bit more media in there to bury the node a little bit more and have these roots that is coming out. Just tuck them into the new potting media, let it root a bit more. So this can become a more vigorous plant. I'm going to show you each one of these. This one has sprouted tiny little babies. And this one here has sprouted twinsies, 2 babies out of a single stem, which is amazing. Now, I'm always holding this pot up to make sure that it's kind of light. We do moisten the top quite a bit every day. We just like lightly squirt some water over it, but we want to keep the inside of here relatively dry, as we don't want to drown the roots in water. This one is the tiniest one. It's got teeny tiny leaf coming from this one stem over here. And then finally, this one is a single one, and it's doing really well. All right, welcome to a 1-month update, and the final one. Look at this top cut. It's put out a new flower. How amazing is that? And also it's put out a rubbery new leaf here that's going to expand in size over time. And as you can see here, the roots are prolific. All the roots are growing so well. So with this guy, I'm starting to water it a little bit more because it's got a more established root system. And also I'll probably start adding a little bit more potting media on top. As it put out more and more new leaves, the main node needs to be buried a little bit more for it to be happy. And as you can see, I've planned all this space for me to add potting media over time slowly. So this is one that will probably size up really well over time. The other ones, unfortunately, one of them rotted off. You can tell from this leaf here, it's turned yellow and mushy. And because I added a little bit of potting media on top, that might have caused it to detriment and caused it to rot. But I did check the inside. I'm not going to do it now because it's messy, but a few days ago I took it out to make sure that everything inside is still solid, and it is. So we're going to just back away with watering a bit. In fact, I put a little red ribbon here on the top of the potting mix to remind my gardener to kind of avoid watering this where possible, because this doesn't need much water at this point. But all the other ones, these guys, they have like taken off. The leaves have gotten bigger and they're so rigid and strong. So I'm excited to see this grow up. If you're still watching this all the way to the very end, it probably means that you are as passionate as I am about plant growth and propagation and multiplication. So I want to share with you this week's sponsor, Plantingo. And it is a plant journal app. And it is actually a lot more than that. There's a lot of built-in features like the light meter, and they have a strong journaling capability that makes everything very automated, that makes you track your plant's growth progress and share it with the rest of the world. So join me tomorrow as I explore some of the features of the app. I'm actually quite new to it, so we're going to explore that together. And to be honest, the app is pretty much free of charge, but they do have some premium features that will be offered for you free of charge for 3 months. So check out tomorrow's episode where we explore this wonderful, exciting app that I'm super stoked. And of course, as usual, don't forget to comment on this video, send it a like, and stay subscribed. If you want to support the channel further and financially, you could be a YouTube member. Simply open this video from any browser, and then next to my channel icon there will be a join button. That's for as small as a cup of coffee a month. Or you can also join my Patreon at patreon.com/Sean from OnlyPlants, and there are a few options there on how much you want to contribute a month. This really helps me out a lot in upgrading my equipment, in my travel expenses and things like that. And I understand that most of you live paycheck to paycheck just as I am, but just in case you're doing well and you have that extra bit to contribute, those are some of the ways that you can do so. But just by you watching this all the way to the very end, it really helps me out a lot. So thank you so much.